Okay everyone, so today I'm going to be showing you how to create a deconstructed portrait image in the style of Loui Jover. As you can see, I've already gotten up a Loui Jover image that I am going to be working from today. I've already opened Photoshop ready to work in. The first thing I'm going to do is go to File, New, and I'm going to open a blank A4 document to work in. I'm also going to go to File and Open and select a portrait that I want to work from today. So I'm just going to use Leonardo DiCaprio for the purpose of the video. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to double click the padlock to get rid of the locked layer, and my layer is now free to play around with and edit as I wish. And I'm going to click and drag into the first blank document that I had. So we can see it's appeared there now. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Edit, Transform and Scale. So we can see that box has appeared, and we're going to hold Shift while clicking the corner and dragging to enlarge. To make sure that the proportion stays the same and we don't end up with a distorted image, it's really important that we keep hold of the Shift key during that time. Once you're happy, just click Enter, and that's the first bit done. The next bit, we're just going to double click on the background layer to get rid of that locked layer again, so we can edit as we please. And clicking back on the Leonardo DiCaprio portrait, I'm now going to start by selecting just the portrait head. So we want to get rid of that background colour, so we're just left with our Leonardo DiCaprio portrait. So there's a few ways we can do this, but I am going to use the magnetic lasso just because I feel it's probably one of the most effective ways to do this. So just clicking and dragging with your cursor where you would like your selection to be. So I'm just going around the portrait because that's where I want the selection to be. I want to get rid of all the background and just be left with lovely Leo in the middle of our image. So really quickly, you can see that I'm keeping my cursor nice and close to the portrait, and around the bottom. Doesn't so much matter about that bit at the bottom. And when you're happy, just double click. Oh, and there we go, we've got our selection. Now we're going to go to Select and Inverse and Delete. So we can see that's gotten rid of some of the background. You can now go to Select and Deselect, and that will get rid of your running ants. And to touch anything up, we're going to use the Quick Selection tool. So that's this tool here, and we're going to make sure it's on the plus. And you can actually change the size of your brush, so it's up to you how big you work. And I'm just going to go back and select any areas by dragging and clicking and then pressing delete. And just a quick shortcut keyboard to deselect is Control and D. So getting rid of any excess that I don't want, just going round and deleting. Once I'm happy with the shape of my portrait, I'm ready to now start to edit. So I'm going back to the Move tool, and the first thing I want to do, if we go back to the Loui Jover image, is we need to make our portrait black and white. So what I'm going to do is go to Image, Adjustments, and Black and White. So we can see, that now our image has turned to black and white. The next thing I'm going to do is clicking on our background layer. I'm going to go over to our image and just double click that padlock to make sure it's unlocked. And if we can see here, the background's not actually white. It's kind of like an off-whitey, really nice ivory colour. So I'm going to go over to my tools and select the eyedropper tool. So that's this little one here. Clicking on it, and I'm going to click that background colour. So we can see now in the colours panel, we've now got that colour picked up. Going back into our portrait, our document, we can use the paint bucket tool, making sure that our background layer is selected. And I'm just going to click there. So now we've got that kind of definition approached. I will continue this editing process on another video, and thank you for watching so far. Okay, welcome back to the second part of our Loui Jover deconstructed portrait. So now what we're up to is we need to start to deconstruct our face. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to our elliptical tool, and I'm going to right click and I want to select the rectangular marquee tool. Because if we're looking at Loui Jover, we can see that the image has been split in half. So that's the first step. So making sure that our layer is selected, we're just going to draw a box by clicking and dragging. I'm going to do it just below the eyes, and we're going to use the move tool. You can use your keyboard for this as well. So you can either use the arrows on your keyboard, like I'm doing now, or you can click and drag. Once you have now done this, once you have separated your image apart, you're going to go to select and deselect. And the next thing, looking back at our artist, we can see that there's kind of this angular shape, so it's been divided into two halves. So going back, I'm going to use the rectangular marquee tool again, same thing, so clicking and dragging, and I'm going to go back to the move tool. I'm just going to move that to the left a little bit. The next bit I'm going to do, just deselect that, is I need to kind of create this eye section on its own, as you can see there on the right hand side. So back to our square marquee, right clicking, and we're going to select the elliptical marquee tool. Now, to make sure that you get an even circle, hold the shift key down before clicking and click and drag until you're happy with your circle. Same thing, so back to the move tool, and we're just going to move this for now somewhere else. So just going to move it over there for now. Select, deselect, or Control D on the keyboard for a shortcut. We're going to go back to our rectangular marquee tool. So right clicking. If you can't find your tool, right clicking on your tool. And we're going to select this whole area and just click delete. Control D to get rid of the running ants. I'm going to draw a box around my eye so I can pick it up. Back to the move tool. I'm going to move the eye somewhere that's kind of on level with the other eye, maybe a little bit above to create that kind of obscure look. Select and deselect. So now we've kind of got this deconstructed face kind of shape which we were going for. So going back to our Loui Jover image, the next thing that we might want to do is start to add in some of the circular shapes that Loui Jover includes quite a lot of. So we're going to use we're going to first add another layer. So down at the bottom, we're going to click onto another layer. I'm going to keep it above the portrait layer. So we're going to go to the elliptical marquee tool, and we're going to just click the shift key. And we're going to draw a couple of different shaped circles, making sure you're keeping hold of the shift key to allow for more circles to appear. And then once you're happy, we're going to go back to our Loui Jover image using the eyedropper tool again to pick up the colours from this image. So I'm just going to select the red colour we can see here. So we can see it's gone into my colours panel. Back to our Loui Jover, our original portrait image, and onto the paint bucket tool. Now it's really important that you check your new layer has been selected, and you're just going to click inside one of these circles, and you can see they all start to colour in with different colours. So I'm just going to select, deselect, and that's the first start to adding in some details to our Loui Jover image. I am going to do this a couple times just to add in some different colours and some definition. So again, holding that shift key to make sure I allow for different circles. Going back to our original image, using the eyedropper tool and following the same process, paint bucket. Okay, thank you very much for watching the second part of creating a Loui Jover deconstructed replica. I will be continuing the process on another video. Thank you. Okay, welcome back to our Loui Jover replica. The next thing that I want to focus on is adding in some of these dashed lines and the clear lines between the circular shapes. So going over to our pen tool on the left hand side, to create the bent kind of curved shapes, you can start by clicking from one side, then going to the other side. So I'm just going to do it back there, keeping hold of your cursor, and pulling either way. So I'm pulling downwards so that the bar moves up. Once you're happy, that's one way you can do it. So you can select the move tool. Also, sorry, I forgot to mention, I've done that on a new layer. So I'd added in a new layer, and that's the one that the line is on. If I wanted to put the line behind the portrait face, it would just be a matter of clicking the line layer and placing it below the portrait layer. So like that, and you can see it's now moved underneath. You can also add in, if I add in a new layer again, go back to the pen tool and do the same thing. So clicking on each side and then dragging. If we wanted to add in the kind of dashed line effect, it would just be a case of going up to this top bar here and selecting the dashes. Now, the bigger that you make the thicker that you make your stroke, the more dashes that you get. So, but I'm going to go for something still quite thin. So once you're happy with that, you can see it's starting to come together. Looking back at our pictures, there's also lines, if we look at our Loui Jover image, jumping from circle to circle. So if I go now back to the pen tool, new layer, back to that pen tool, clicking from one circle to the other, and then pulling and dragging to create that bend. And then if I wanted to add in those dashes, I'm just going to turn that down a little bit thinner, clicking that move tool to see it's still a little bit small, so I can always click back. If you do something that you don't like, you can always go to edit and undo, and edit, undo, and you can see it's now gone. So going back to our pen, new layer, create that bending shape, going back to those dashed lines and just going back to that move tool. So we're starting to create a bit of a Loui Jover replica. Another way you can do it is go to the pencil tool, so this tool here, and we're just going to create a new layer for this. So what you can do is, I'm just going to bring our size right down, so we want to make sure it's quite thin. You can even test this to see what it's like. So the thickness of that is right, but the colour is wrong. So going down to our colour panel here at the bottom, I'm just going to select black, and I can also go to our eraser tool and just make that a bit bigger and get rid of any mistakes we make. So going back to our pencil, you can click, if you hold shift before you click, so I've just hold shift now and I'm clicking, I'm just going to start by going straight to that eye and clicking again. I've got hold of shift still, and then I'm clicking back. So we create these kind of shapes coming off. It replicates these kind of triangular shapes that come off onto different parts of the portrait. So now, if I go back to my image, I can now start to, if I use the paint bucket tool, go back to our image, use the eyedropper to select certain colours from our portrait, paint bucket. I can actually click into those sections, eyedropper, go for the green this time, and start to build up those colours. So you can see we're starting to it's starting to look more Loui Jover-esque. Okay, thank you very much for watching this part of our Loui Jover replica. I will now add one more video to the final process. Okay everyone, welcome to the last part of our Loui Jover replica. So the next part of focus will be the circular black outlines that we can see the artist has decided to use throughout his image. So we can see there's lots of different outline shapes, circular shapes. I'm just going to show you how to create them. So going back to our image, I'm going to start off by creating a new layer, and I want to make sure that layer is above our portrait layer. I'm then going to go over to our circular ellipse tool, and at the top I want to make sure that the fill section is empty and that the stroke section is black to replicate the artist's style. And what I'm going to do first, if I wanted to create a perfect circle, I'm going to hold the shift key down and then click and drag to imitate that shape. Once I'm happy with the size, I can click to the move tool and use the keyboard keys, the keyboard arrows to place carefully that circle. I'm going to go and select another layer now to show you a different type of circle, going back to the ellipse tool, and this time I'm not going to use the shift key because I'm not interested in creating a perfect circle. Again, same process, going back to that move tool, and I'm just going to use those keyboard arrows to place it accurately. So we can see that that second outline hasn't shown up clearly. Now that is because it is underneath the layer of our circles. We can see the circles layer there, and that is where the outline is. So I'm just going to click and drag that above. So now it's clearer. I'm finally going to have a go at creating this semicircle black outline. So we'll have a go at creating that around the eye. So new layer again. Back to the ellipse tool, and I'm going to improve the stroke a little bit, so I'm going to move it up a little bit to create that thickness. And again, not using that shift key because I'm not interested in creating a perfect circle. Once I'm happy with the size, I'm still going to improve that thickness a little bit more, so bump it up a little bit. I'm just going to click that move tool and click in the background so I can see that I'm happy with that position. Now, if I wanted to get rid of half of that circle, because if we look at the artist, it's only on half of the image, I'm going to right click that layer and I'm going to click rasterize. This changes the object from a smart object into something that we can now edit. I can now go to use our square marquee tool and I can actually click where I want to get rid of. So I'm just going to click and select all of that area and just press delete. And then Control D to get rid of those running ants. So we can now see that our semicircle has now appeared. The last thing I would like to show you in terms of our Loui Jover replica is how to create these dots that are on the circle like the artist has created. So new layer again, making sure that this layer is above our circles layer. That is important because our dots won't show up otherwise. Going back to our pencil tool, and I'm going to make sure that the brush size is relatively big because they seem quite thick on the artist image. I'm also going down to our colours panel and I'm making sure that it's selected on white to replicate the artist's work. And now I'm just going to click and add in all of those dots. Okay, so there are a few tips on how to create a Loui Jover style deconstructed portrait. Please do have a play around with those skills and really do explore what you can do with them. Thank you for watching.